Boa tarde, senhoras e senhores. Hoje é 11 de janeiro de 2026. São 19 horas. Senhoras e senhores, dando continuidade, neste domingo há uma reportagem que eu publiquei por volta das 17 horas sobre a expansão, o expansionismo de Donald Trump em clara parecência com o que ocorreu nos anos 1920, 1930 na Alemanha nazista. Eu quero dar continuidade a isso com algumas reportagens de jornalistas americanos e árabes sobre o que é que está acontecendo agora nos Estados Unidos, que é um plano que nos atinge diretamente. Veja bem, o que o Donald Trump está planejando não é apenas tomar o petróleo da Venezuela, e no que diz respeito ao Brasil, há um risco. O vídeo da tarde falou sobre a questão regional da América Latina, e neste vídeo você vai ver alguns documentários falando sobre o risco aqui no Brasil, porque há um risco concreto de nós sermos um alvo dos Estados Unidos diretamente durante o processo eleitoral de 2026. Vamos assistir. Você que acompanha o Blog da Cidadania, eu venho pedir a sua ajuda. Está bastante difícil do ponto de vista de remuneração para poder financiar o trabalho aqui do Blog da Cidadania. Então, se você puder nos ajudar fazendo uma doação, se você considerar fazer essa doação, use o código Pix que está na tela, nos ajude para a gente poder fazer um canal melhor para você e nos manter para poder enfrentar essa guerra que vai ser a eleição de 2026. Conto com você.
Both have criticized the US attack, but have taken no action. What are the implications for Russia and China? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Adrian Finnegan. Backing by a superpower once might have been seen as a kind of insurance or fireproofing, protecting you against invasion or attack. But Venezuela's alliance with China and Russia didn't stop the US swooping and capturing President Nicolas Maduro last Saturday. Beijing and Moscow have both condemned the US action against a sovereign nation, with Moscow facing accusations of double standards given its invasion of Ukraine. Both have their own issues involving US President Donald Trump, Russia over the war in Ukraine, and China over trade and Taiwan. So, what impact could events in Venezuela have on Beijing and Moscow? Could their global alliances be weakened or strengthened by Trump's actions in Venezuela? We'll discuss all that with our guests shortly, but first a report from Paul Ging.
Nicolas Maduro's relationship with two of the world's most powerful nations were long established. Russia supported Venezuela financially and with military hardware, both during Maduro's presidency and from when his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, came to power in 1999. Moscow also accepted that Maduro had won the 2024 election, despite Western countries saying it was rigged. For its part, China was, after Western sanctions, the top buyer of Venezuelan oil. But this support doesn't appear to have counted for anything when the US went into Venezuela to extract Nicolas Maduro on Saturday. President Donald Trump says the US is now firmly in charge.
The country is a mess. It's been horribly run. The oil is just flowing at a very low level, much lower than, even if it was badly run, it should have more income, more oil than what they're doing. So we're going to have the big oil companies go in. They're going to fix the infrastructure. They're going to invest money. We're not going to invest anything. We're going to just take care of the country. We're going to cherish the country. We're going to take care, more importantly, of the people, including Venezuelans that are living in our country that were forced to leave their country.
Russia and China condemned the US operation. China's foreign ministry said,
China is deeply shocked and strongly condemns the use of force by the US against a sovereign country and the use of force against the president of a country. China firmly opposes such hegemonic behavior by the US, which seriously violates international law, violates Venezuela's sovereignty, and threatens peace and security in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Russia's response was similarly forthright.
The United States committed an act of armed aggression against Venezuela. This is deeply concerning and condemnable. The pretexts used to justify such actions are unfounded. Ideological animosity has prevailed over pragmatism and the willingness to build relationships based on trust and predictability.
In the past, an alliance with a superpower was a form of geopolitical insurance for many countries, but that would no longer seem to apply, as the US action in Venezuela shows. Paul Ging, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
For more on this, let's bring in Benjamin Norton. He's founder and editor-in-chief of Geopolitical Economy Report. First up, thanks for joining us. Second, you're in Beijing. I'd like to get a sense of what is the reaction to all this from that part of the world.
Well, it's similar to the response we've seen from most countries, which is outrage and anger. The United States has abducted the internationally recognized leader of a foreign sovereign country, which is a blatant attack on the sovereignty of Venezuela. And it's a threat to other countries around the world. This is why, President Lula da Silva in Brazil so vociferously condemned it. And it's even why the Chilean president, Gabriel Boric, who ironically had been a big critic of Maduro, but now he's afraid as well. And he said, if it happened in Venezuela today, it can happen anywhere tomorrow.
And how does this look in terms of the strength Venezuela has, in terms of the trade ties and cooperation Venezuela shares with countries in Asia?
This is a very important issue, and in fact, I think this is one of the reasons why the Trump administration has been so aggressive in Latin America and has attacked Venezuela, among other countries. If you read the national security strategy published at the end of last year by the Trump administration, they say that they want to impose the so-called Monroe Doctrine in Latin America. In fact, in the press conference that Trump gave after bombing Venezuela and abducting its president, Trump invoked the Monroe Doctrine, and he actually referred to it as the Don Roe Doctrine after himself. And part of this strategy is the U.S. is trying to isolate Latin America from its partners in Asia, especially China. China has become the largest trading partner of South America, and the Trump administration has essentially told the countries of the region they're not allowed to have relations with China, as well as with countries like Russia and Iran. If you listen to the rhetoric from Trump and Marco Rubio, they heavily emphasized Venezuela's partnership with Iran, and of course the Trump administration has also bombed Iran. So we see that, one of the reasons that Venezuela was targeted, of course, we have to mention Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves. And in the press conference that Trump gave, he endlessly spoke about taking Venezuela's oil, U.S. companies investing in Venezuela's oil. That's certainly a factor. But another issue they talked about is Venezuela's close partnership with China, Russia, and Iran, and the attempt to impose the Monroe Doctrine and to cut off Latin America from the rest of the world.
But Benjamin, can Latin America and China be decoupled?
Well, economically, no. I mentioned that China is the largest trading partner of the region when you exclude Mexico, and that partnership economically has been deepening more and more over time. Ironically, economically, the U.S. is actually a competitor with many Latin American countries like Brazil and Argentina, because the U.S. is also a major exporter of agricultural products like soybeans and meat, along with Brazil and Argentina. So these are not complementary economies, whereas China is the biggest importer of many of these goods from Latin America. However, politically, I think the strategy of the Trump administration is they want to politically try to cut off Latin America's relations with China to the extent they can. We've seen, for instance, that Marco Rubio, in the first trip he took abroad as the Secretary of State, he went to Panama and several other Latin American countries, and he pressured Panama to withdraw from China's global infrastructure project, the Belt and Road Initiative. And we're also seeing that in Honduras, a new right-wing pro-Trump president has vowed to cut relations with China. So I think we're going to see the Trump administration politically try to, the first part of the strategy is to politically cut ties with China through blackmail and threats like we see in Venezuela. And then economically, the US wants to slowly decouple, but of course that's going to be very difficult to do.
And how can the US explain what happened in Venezuela to its allies in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, the explanation from the Trump administration is might makes right. This is the law of the jungle. They're not even really trying to justify it. I mean, they'll do lip service to the idea of drugs, but we all know that's not true because Trump just a few weeks ago released from prison and pardoned one of the worst drug traffickers on earth, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who is the former leader of Honduras, who worked with the infamous Mexican drug cartel leader El Chapo Guzman. So we know that Trump's not actually concerned about drugs. And by the way, leading experts at the United Nations have shown that Venezuela's role in cocaine production is absolutely insignificant, very, very small. And then when it comes to fentanyl, which is a major issue in the US, Venezuela has absolutely nothing to do with fentanyl. So, a lot of countries are asking, why is Trump doing this? And then you listen to Trump's press conference and he says, we want to take the oil. He says, we want to impose the Monroe Doctrine. He says, we want to impose US dominance in Latin America. So if you go over to the Pacific, the Asia-Pacific region, you can be sure that a lot of countries are very concerned about what they're seeing, because even longtime US allies of the US are asking, well, wait a second, the US now thinks it can invade any country and abduct any foreign leader it doesn't like. And Trump has also been attacking so-called allies, imposing tariffs on so-called allies. So you can bet that a lot of these countries in the Asia-Pacific are asking, could Trump potentially do the same thing to us? I mean, this is the really dangerous moment where the message from Washington is that the rule of the order today is the law of the jungle, the rule by the strongest.
Benjamin Norton, thanks for your time and for your insights. Great having you.
Thank you.
Você que acompanha o Blog da Cidadania, eu venho pedir a sua ajuda. Este fim de ano está bastante difícil do ponto de vista de remuneração para poder financiar o trabalho aqui do Blog da Cidadania. Então, se você puder nos ajudar fazendo uma doação, se você considerar fazer essa doação, use o código Pix que está na tela, nos ajude para a gente poder fazer um canal melhor para você e nos manter para poder enfrentar essa guerra que vai ser a eleição de 2026. Conto com você.